Ladies and gentlemen, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the studio this evening. This evening we're going to be painting this lovely hummingbird. I'm going to just jump in with this. Let me give you the particulars about what I'm using. I'm using my Rubloff brushes. These are a Russian brush company. It's a natural hair brush. I like them very much. Come to a nice point, hold a lot of water. It's a sable brush. I don't use it very often, but they are quite a nice brush. I'm using my M Graham watercolor paints that are on my studio desk. They are there most of the time. I like them very much. As we go along in this video, I'm going to tell you what colors I'm using as I'm using them. And the paper that I'm using is a wood pulp paper I'm trying out. This particular paper is from a company called Hippie Crafter, and as I said, it's a wood pulp paper. I had a little bit of trouble with the paper doing this video, but not so much that it prevented me from making a very nice painting. Up in the upper left hand corner is my reference photo. You can see he's just a little hummingbird sitting on a stick, and I love hummingbirds. They're fantastic. Wonderful little creatures. I've got 4 feeders for them outside of my house. I like them so much. Okay, the greens I'm using here, this is a little bit of phthalo green. I've mixed in just a little bit of gamboge to take the brightness out of that phthalo. Put some phthalo in there. I'm going to be using a little bit of olive green to tamp this down with. And I don't want to quite touch the red on his throat there. I want those colors to stay separate. And I'm going to paint everything down right to his wing. Those big, long, grayish flight feathers. I'm going to paint everything but those. I'm going to go around on his stomach over here. There we go. That is a little burnt umber mixed with a little yellow ochre in the pool of paint that's already on my palette. There's a little bit of red in there and a little bit of green in there. It's just a nice light neutral color is all I'm looking for. And I'm trying to paint, giving, I don't know, some little flecks here and there. There's a shot of a little Hansa yellow right in there, a cooler yellow. I'm trying to give a ragged edge on these, so that when we come back a little bit later, it will look as though maybe there's some feathers here and there that we can use. Okay, now I'm going to paint a little bit on the stick down here. This is just burnt umber, a little bit of Payne's gray, and a little bit of ultramarine blue. Just mixing those in. There's a little bit of that stick showing between his toes. There's a little bit more Payne's gray in with that burnt umber. And this is going back away from us. It's getting lighter back there. I'm not so worried about that. And a little bit of blue hopefully will push that back just a little bit. But as you see, I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm not too worried about it. We'll get all that sorted out later on in the video. I just want to get some basic colors on here first of all. And I think I've got that. I seem to have pushed it up a little off screen. There we go. Get him back in the center of the screen where he needs to be. Now this is wood pulp paper, cellulose paper, and before I could put on my second layer of paint, I need to make sure that that first layer is totally dry. If it's not totally dry, it's going to pick up the first layer when I put more paint on, and it's going to make it very muddy, and I don't want that. So I'm just feeling around to see if it's dry or if it's not dry, or what it might look like or what it might feel like. And now I'm going to get going with the back of this bird, trying to give some shape and definition to him before we put in too many details. I want to make his body look rounded before we do too much. This is a little bit of phthalo green with a little bit of ultramarine in there, just to try to tamp that brightness down a little bit. And on this side, we've got a little bit of, again, burnt umber with a little bit of yellow ochre tossed in there, just to give a little bit of definition, a little bit of, like I said, roundness to this bird, a little bit. Let's make him not look flat. That's all I'm going for at this point. I'm not worried about any details, just trying to drop in some colors. I'm using a fairly small brush here. I could use a larger brush. I'm still putting on paint kind of in a large quantity, not doing anything that's too small. Here's one of the problems with using wood pulp paper, is that it seems to want to just flow and flow and flow, and all the colors go together, and oftentimes you will get an unexpected tide line, and I don't like tide lines or hard edge. So with this paper, for me, that's been a fight the entire painting. But we'll deal with it, knowing that that's an issue. We'll deal with it. All right, his beak here is a lot of Payne's gray. There's not a whole lot of color to his beak that I'm using. And as I go into his head, it's a little bit of that Payne's gray with some olive green and maybe just a little bit of phthalo for color thrown in. And as I get down to his throat, I'm going to mix in a little bit of pyrrole red with a bit of azo orange to give that nice bright pop of orangey red color there. But here, what I'm working on now is it's darker. It's tinted a little bit towards the green. I may have even thrown in just a bit of sepia in there to darken it up. But this is kind of underneath the ball of his head, his cranium there. I want to make sure that gets nice and dark. And I'm trying to blend it out, trying to keep those colors from just totally running wherever the water is. Again, it's a little easier with cotton paper, but you can do it with this wood paper also. You just have to keep on top of it a little bit. And I'm just looking to see on a reference photo where there's some dark, where there's some light. There's a little bit of dark up there. And I'm going to pull that paint out. Just give myself a nice blended wash, a graded wash all the way out over his head. All right, now we're painting his flight feathers, and this first layer of this is going to be quite a bit of Payne's gray. Not a whole lot else in here. If there's some other stray colors on my palette in where I have my Payne's gray mixed, it's going in there, but I'm not worrying about it. I'm just trying to block in some colors at this point. There it goes. It's a lot of Payne's gray, and Payne's gray is going to dry quite a bit lighter. So if this looks dark to you, it won't end up being that way. We've just got a little bit to fill in here. The real magic with these flight feathers is going to come when we start putting the details in. Right now we just need to get some color in there. And right on the top of his breast up there, I think we need a little bit of color. Something to differentiate it from the background. So let's go ahead and just put a very light, very light bit of color right there, just to knock some of the brightness down. Not necessarily because we need the extra color in there, but just to knock that brightness down a little bit. And it looks nice now. Now you can see his head really has started to take quite a bit of shape as that paint has dried. It might have looked really dark before, but you can see now some contours in his head where it really looks like it's rounded. Just finishing up a little bit of darkening the underside of that beak there. And again, that beak is now, the bottom of that's now got 3 layers of Payne's Gray on that. I have no idea what I'm talking about with my hands. But we're going to get started here on his feathers. And this is that same color mixture. This is some phthalo green and just a touch of olive green in there to take away some of the brightness. And I'm going to use this to start defining with a little bit of negative painting exactly where all the feathers are on this bird. And you're going to see we're going to do a lot of feathers on this bird. Somewhere in the area of, I don't know, 30 or 40 different individual feathers on here. And wherever I think there needs to be a little feather, I'm just going to make either a horseshoe or a line, and you'll see how they all relate to each other. The lines will go on the flight feathers or the feathers on his tail, and these kind of horseshoe looking feathers will go along his back. And just by building some of these up, we're going to start to show all of the feathers, the definition on this bird. So without doing much, we've already got a few feathers on there, and you can start to see how they look like they're stacked one on top of another. Now, one of the real interesting things about hummingbirds are the bright colors underneath their throats. I think we all like to see that, and I'm trying to, and this is very hard because this is quite a small area, but put on the color and still make just a very slight graded wash across all these little tiny feathers that are up there. Some of them I do a better job with than others, but in the end it turns out just fine. I think part of the problem with this painting, what makes it difficult, is the paper. If I'd have used cotton paper on this one, I think it would have been quite a bit easier to do those tiny graded washes. With the wood pulp paper, it just made it a little bit more difficult. But no matter, I'm going to jump around from spot to spot and let some areas dry a little bit while I paint others. And you'll see as we go along, all of these feathers start to develop one at a time. In here again, this is just some simple Payne's Gray in here. I didn't put any sepia, I didn't put any ultramarine, I didn't put any burnt umber in here. These feathers are really gray, and so I wanted to keep to that, and so it's just Payne's Gray. And you can see I've painted around a little bit of the white feathers, just kind of at the base of his tail there. I'm trying to paint around some little tiny feathers, just so we can see those as they're coming over top of that wing a little bit. He's got them tucked in just a bit. And one nice thing about these Rubloff brushes that I'm using is that they come to a very fine point. They hold a lot of water and they hold a lot of paint, and they lay it on the paper very nicely. But one thing that's really nice is that they come to a fine point, so if you need to paint in a tiny little area, you can do that pretty easily with these brushes. Now, having said that, if you're looking to buy some of these brushes, they're kind of hard to find. I bought these on eBay several years ago, and the person I bought them from, I don't think sells them anymore, but I'm pretty sure they are still being sold on eBay. Okay, now the colors that I'm using up here on the throat of this hummingbird, it's a little bit of pyrrole red mixed in there, and there's a little bit of maroon mixed in, and just a little bit of a yellow. I want to kind of make this a little darker. So I've just kind of tapped into those 3 colors, and in varying different amounts. If I get a little bit more maroon in there, that's fine. If I get a little bit more pyrrole red inside of that, that's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. And if I get a little bit more of a yellow, a gamboge or an azo orange in there, that's fine too. I won't worry about that. There's a lot of different color variations when you look at the throats of these hummingbirds. So I just kind of let it go how it's going to go. But I am trying to build these up, excuse me, so that they can be seen almost as scales. And it's a little difficult to see them right now with the paint being wet. Kind of looks like one solid mass up there, but as they dry, it'll get a little bit better. Whoa, come on, focus, there we go. It'll get a bit better, and you'll be able to see these a little bit more distinctly. And if we need to come back and put in just a drop of color kind of at the point of the scales, you know, in between two, then we'll come back and do that. And while his throat is drying, I'm just going to continue to paint negative paint in a couple of feathers here and there. Oh yeah, there we go. You see exactly what I'm doing. And then into his flight feathers here, a couple of more. We're just going to very carefully put these in. There we go. And this is a technique that anybody can do. It's just doing a lot of graduated washes or graded washes, but knowing where to put them and being able to do it in a small space. But with a little practice, anybody could actually do this. It's not that difficult. And by doing this, there you go. You could really make this into a dramatic painting. And just continuing to put a few feathers in here. Again, just Payne's Gray with a small brush that has a fine point on it. Now, I will say I tried to use the Hippie Crafter paper because it's quite a bit larger than a normal 9x12 sheet of paper that I would paint on. This is 11x14, so this painting is quite a bit larger than my normal ones. But in retrospect, I don't think this painting was any easier to do than a smaller one, just for the fact that the paper was so difficult to use. It just the paints just didn't flow the same way that I thought they should. They didn't react on the paper the way I thought they should. But you'll see in the end, we get through it and end up with quite a nice painting at the end. And I think that's kind of a lesson for everybody to see in this. If the paper that you like to use or that you can afford to use is wood pulp paper, cotton paper is a bit pricey. Any of the cotton paper is a bit pricey. I totally get it. It's hard to, or it's expensive to buy that paper. Well, you can do the same things with wood pulp paper. It just takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more patience, but you can totally do the same thing. And it might take a little bit more work also. You spend a little bit more time finessing your painting than you would if you used cotton paper, but like I said, you can still paint a fantastic painting regardless. Okay, I think I'm going to go back to the branch now. I think that's what I head to at this point. And you can see here, I'm not sure what I'm doing. Nope. A little bit more on the flight feathers. But you can see this, the technique really makes for some dramatic lines and some interesting effects. It's just putting a little bit of paint on and blending one side of it out, putting a little paint on, blending one side of it out. Something anybody could do if you want to sit down and take the time to figure out how to make these little tiny washes. All right, back up to his neck here. Oh, I put a little bit of shadow underneath here. That's a little bit of ultramarine with just a tiny bit of Payne's gray. I don't want too much blue under there, which is why I mixed in a little bit of Payne's gray, but just trying to make those stand out on his throat a little bit. I really do like to try to push the envelope on this and make everything look super 3D, and this effect allows you to do it. And changing the colors from one layer to the next layer can really help with that. The blue underneath the red would help. The gray underneath the yellow or the green really helps to add to that 3D effect. Shoot, even a normal green under green, if you can see on the top of his wing there, really helps to add to that 3D effect. All right, enough little scales up there, enough little feathers. Let's try to blend that in a little bit. Make this look like it's underneath his chin. All right, a little bit darker in a couple of areas, a little bit lighter in a couple of areas. And we can make it look as though there really is some roundness to his head. We have some light on the top. We need some dark underneath here. There we go. And darkening his beak one more time. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten. I'm going to get to that eye. It's a big white hole right there right now. We'll get to that. It's all still wet, but I'm going to try to go around his eye. Kind of the eye socket right there is a little bit darker in the reference photo. He's got a few lines up here on his head where his feathers run in a line. Maybe we'll put a couple of those on, or try to put a couple of those on. This is one area where I think if I were to redo this, I wouldn't put those on. I would leave those off and just leave his head really smooth, or make those lines super, super small. I don't think that putting that on that way has gained us a whole lot in the painting, but I don't think it distracts from it either. There you go. He's got a nice head, and I have found when I go back and do this. Do these paintings later on, and I put some final details on these, I found that if I put some little tiny feathers right along the outside edge, it really makes it look as though the bird's kind of coming off the page. It's just little things like that really help to spruce up your painting. Alright, I'm just futzing with all of these little tiny feathers underneath his chin here. You see there's a lot to do under there. And at some point, I need to decide, as we all do when we're painting, what is finished and what needs more work to be done. Those to me look to be about done. I wouldn't want to do too much more. Here I'm just drawing in a line or two here and there, something to give a bit of contour to his body. his whole stomach area, his chest and stomach area is all just a mass of color. It's all the same intensity, and I want to give your eye an easier chance to see that it's round. So wherever his body goes, I want to put just a little line here and there, so it's easier to pick up that his body has a particular shape to it. And trying to make those little white feathers just below his throat stand out a little bit. Just dropping in a little color there. All right, we're actually coming down to the end on this guy. We don't have too much more to go on him. I think he's starting to look pretty good. I like it. Yeah, see, we've got some more feathers that we've got to do here, and we can put those on while those feet are drying. And a couple of nice big feathers here. Again, I don't necessarily have some of these drawn on. I have a couple of the feathers drawn on, but I don't have all of these drawn in. I'm just kind of putting them on however I think they need to be. Some of them aren't quite as straight as I would like. That's okay. This is another instance where the paper is not helping me. It's just ever so slightly damp. And my colors are running a little bit more than I would like, but I'm trying to give the indication of some little tiny feathers there, right almost above those flight feathers. Just the indication of some shadow lines on the top of his chest. Yep, darkening up his eye. I'm going to come back and put a little highlight on his eye at some point too. I think I put this dark on here and it kind of makes him look mean. I should have not done that. That's okay. It's totally okay. As I was painting it, I saw one thing. As I'm watching it in replay, I see something a little bit different. It's interesting how our eyes pick up different things, different times that we look at it. There we go. So this nice little feather up there. Well, we're getting to the end of this painting, so let me say, if you like this, give a like to the video, subscribe to my channel. I'd love to see you all back here in the studio again if you're not already a subscriber. Down below in the write-up, there are links to my website, where I've got a lot of watercolor stuff. Actually, it's all watercolor stuff. There are links to my social media down below, Instagram, Twitter. There's links to my Discord down below. If you'd like to join my Discord server, we have discussions about watercolor painting. There's a monthly challenge you can do. I've got a little community that I'm building over there. If you have any questions about watercolors and you want to ask me, that's a great place to ask. I can go into more detail about things than maybe I can in some comments for a video. So that'd be nice. I'd love to see you over there. And that's about it. I guess just a few additional details on this guy to help him stand out a little bit. These feet are primarily Payne's Gray. It might be just a touch of sepia in with these. That's about it. Oh, and I forgot I'm going to put a little tiny background on this. Yes, there we go. Put a little bit of water, just so he's not floating in white space. A little bit of water out here. There we go. And all that green that I've got on my palette, I'm going to put on here. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Come on, Michael, just put it on there. I'm waiting for the water to dry just a little bit so it doesn't run out super amount. Just drop it on like that and let the water take everything away. There it goes. Just blend it out a little bit. However that water is going to take it, it's going to go. And maybe a little bit on the other side. Let's put some water over here. There we go. And on this side, maybe we'll use some of that yellow ochreish color from his chest over there. There it is. I just let that come out and let the water take that away. Blend it out. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Get him in frame. I'm going to sign it. There it is. Highlight on his eye, and he's done. I think he turned out great. I like him. And I actually even like the simple little background around him. So again, if you like him, give a like to the video. Check out my website. Check out social media. Leave a comment down below if you like this guy or if you'd like to see a different bird painted. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, thank you so much for joining me here in the studio. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.